This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to Trinity Sunday. Our gospel reading is from Matthew 28:16 through 20. This morning I'd like to focus on verse 17 of today's gospel and what we can learn from it. Verse 17. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. To look at this vision without our own judgment is to understand that initially doubted doesn't mean that they had no faith or that they didn't believe. Rather, they gave their hearts to him, but in their heads they couldn't make sense of or understand really what was happening. We too, from time to time, struggle with what is in our heart and what is in our head, especially when the two are not aligned. Part of their experience made sense, but another part did not. The experience was real. The logic and the understanding, however, were unable to match the depth and reality of their experience. Again, who among us hasn't had that kind of experience? If you've ever felt embarrassed or made to feel you are not a good Christian because you have doubt or doubts, I pray that burden you've been carrying is removed. Even though our worries and fears are described with various names, let's call a spade and be okay with expressing, in my faith, I do have doubt. Truth is, doubt has always existed within the Christian faith. Even people who were with Jesus, who knew him personally, still struggled with knowing if it was all real. But faith is not the absence of doubt. Rather, faith keeps believing even in the midst of our doubts. Christian theologian Paul Tillich once wrote, doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It's an element of faith. You see, worship and doubt are not mutually exclusive. In Genesis, Abraham doubted whether God was really going to make good on his promise to give him and Sarah a son. Years had gone by, and now both of them thought, we're too old to have any children. How about in the book of 1 Kings? Elijah had his doubts that God was still with him. In Luke, Mary had her doubts about how she could be pregnant with the promised Messiah, asking the angel, how can this be since I am a virgin? And in the Gospel of John, Andrew had doubts how Jesus could feed 5,000 with only 5 fish and 2 loaves of bread. In Acts, Peter had doubts about reaching out to the Gentiles. Reverend Glenn Vanderkloot, a retired pastor of Faith Lutheran Church, published an article in which he stated, we need to learn to be relaxed about doubt. The more attention you give to your doubts, the more your doubts will grow. By worrying about your doubts, you can become locked in this vicious cycle of uncertainty. Doubt is natural. Faith is not the absence of doubt, but rather faith keeps believing even in the midst of your doubts. You might be surprised to learn that doubt is a learning tool that we all can use to our advantage. How? Well, embrace doubt and seek answers in the very things you doubt. When you find yourself questioning some aspect of your faith or the things you believe, invest some time and effort in studying what you are being challenged by. Seek to better understand what you are doubting and work your way to a resolution. It is within that framework that doubt will lead to growth, and we never should stop learning. And much of our growth as believers has come from a response to doubt. Now, there are many ways to overcome our doubts, and at some point in our lives, I do believe we find ways that work best for us, depending on the circumstances. Reflect on what's in your toolbox for the best outcome. Perhaps for you it's prayer, reading the Bible, meditation, or sharing your doubts with someone who you impeccably trust that will not only listen, but encourage you. And yes, you may need to take baby steps. Don't rush the progress because you don't have to figure it out immediately. Like a good cup of tea, it needs time to brew. Take a few moments this week and purposefully think of some of the experiences that are bigger, more beautiful, and beyond what our minds can fathom or make sense of. You know that rainbow after a rain? A beautiful sunrise or sunset? Oh, that feel of a newborn when placed in your hands for the first time. When you connect with your loved one across the room with just your eyes without saying a word. You see, we bask in beauty and still we doubt. We hold new life in our hands and still we doubt. We love and we doubt. In just these simple examples, I think we can all agree doubt is not a deficiency. It's awe, it's wonder, it's a connection to another soul. It's a declaration that we have glimpsed the divine and touched the transcendent. Ultimately, it's our recognition that the experience is greater than our words could ever articulate. In the end, isn't it the experience in what we most want? What we experience is what has the capacity to change and transform our lives in many ways, many words. Explanation and concepts never will. It's more about rainbows, sunrises and sunsets, babies. How could it not also be true about God? And so it is. We worship and we doubt. We experience the really real, but we also struggle and cannot make sense of it. God's presence is real. It's not a promise to be realized in the future. It's a promise that he has already been and continues to be fulfilled. Jesus tells us in verse 20 of today's gospel, I'm with you always. And that's the best place to start when we doubt, and a good place to end reflections on this Trinity Sunday. Thanks be to God. Amen.